Before the presentation begins, I'd like to give credit to Adrian Von Ziegler for creating the wonderful music you'll hear in the background. I'll have a link to his channel and a playlist for all the music used in this video in the description below, so go check out his stuff and consider throwing some money his way. Just to clarify, I am in no way, shape, or form associated with him and or his production of music. I just really enjoy his work. Warning: this video contains footage that has been sped up as well as quick jump cuts for the sake of saving time. Due to the speed, lighting, and the effects from the game, this video may trigger photosensitive epilepsy in some individuals. If you experience any discomfort for any duration of watching this video, stop watching immediately and see a medical professional before continuing. Thank you, stay safe, and have a good day. Hello everyone and welcome to Burnt Toaster Productions. I'm your host, Burnt Toaster. Today I'm doing something a little different. If you've read the title, you'll know it is a challenge run. This is also the bonus video for the Let's Play series, mostly because I wanted to make something with a bit more content than Paladin going psychotic. Before we begin, I'll go over the rules I have set. The rules are pretty simple and are as follows. I cannot do any damage with anything other than the stick. I'm only allowed to use a different melee weapon, a ranged weapon, or an attack spell if there's no plausible way to attack an enemy with a stick, so the game can continue. The weapon or spell will be of the weakest tier/level of its kind. I'm only allowed 3 support spells. None of these spells are allowed to directly damage enemies or increase the amount of damage I can do. Slow time will also be barred as it is too easy to absolutely cheese enemies. I'm not allowed to wear any armor. Clothing is optional and I've decided to wear only a dress, because I've never done it before and I can still look pretty while whacking things with a stick. Playing on chicken difficulty will be allowed as heroic is simply not something I want to deal with. It is also not the intended difficulty by the original developers. I may be a glutton for punishment, but I'm not insane. The allowed amount of resurrection files is a grand total of 9 throughout the entire run. The run ends either when the hero dies or a rule is broken. As a bonus, I must get my drinking class to alcoholic, so that means guzzling down enough beer to knock a horse unconscious. While it isn't a hard requirement, only someone who's positively hammered most of the time would use a stick as a weapon of war. Now with all that out of the way, let's jump right in. Naturally, in the beginning, we're tasked with getting gold for Therese's birthday gift, and since I cannot do damage with anything other than the mightiest weapon in the game, the humble stick, I go through childhood without harming others with my fists. You could argue that because punching someone is the lowest form of damage output, it's allowed, but I ultimately decided to play it safe and refrain from beating the ever-loving crap out of some kids and adults. After watching some boxes and ultimately ruining someone's marriage twice, I go to my father to collect the 2 other gold coins needed for a box of chocolates, then make my way to the trader to buy them. I give the chocolates to my sister and proceed to witness the worst surprise birthday party in history. No one told me it was going to be a costume party, and I'm severely underdressed. Feeling scared and embarrassed, I go back home to my father, only to find him on the ground in a puddle of his own blood. Or some strawberry jam, I can never remember. Either way, it looks like the party got pretty intense. After I take Maze's hand and teleport to the Heroes Guild, I start a new life to take revenge on the people that had ruined what was supposed to be a fun time. I start training in the guild and finally get the one true love in my life, the stick. I also got my first taste of combat in the form of some giant beetles, but nothing too crazy has happened so far. Time seems to skip by me, and the guild master hands me a sword. But I'm not a normal boy. I don't want it. Not wanting to use it, I attempt to use the stick to spar with Whisper, but it seems like the game is forcing me to use the iron longsword that I received instead. So I go through the sparring match and come up on top as usual. I do remedy this little disappointment by getting graded and demolishing Whisper with the stick. Also learn about using bows and will, but honestly I never used bows and I only used will offensively like once or twice. Time seems to fly by again, and I have one final test before I can graduate and become a hero. I must fight some weird old man in the woods. For the melee portion, I once again tried to use my stick to no avail. The game wants me to use the sword, and there's naught I can do but comply. After lazily fighting Maze, I finally graduate, but someone decided to put clothes on me against my will, and in response, I took them off immediately. Because I wanted a dress and not some medieval-inspired polo, jeans, work gloves, and work boots. As for the first thing I leveled up with my hero, I chose health, because not dying is very fun. My first actual quest was dealing with the Wasp Queen and her brood. Now initially I kept the bow on me because I genuinely thought you couldn't hit her with a melee weapon. It seems I was horribly wrong about that, and you can beat the flying insect to death. But then again, an angry giant flying bee who knocks you down when you get close tends to make people think you can't touch her with a melee weapon. After using the stick as pesticide, I'm told Maze wants to talk to me about something, but I decided to go shopping before I talk to him. I go to the tailor in Bowerstone South and grab the one outfit I decided to wear, the dress. Like all clothing, it doesn't have great stats, but at least I can feel pretty, even though I'm 90% sure someone said my father was a troll in passing. I talk to Maze to get more exposition and the like, then go get a new haircut. I went with a ponytail and a long beard, mostly so I could roleplay as some siren-like mythological creature that lures drunk men away from their homes, kids, and wives only to beat them with a stick. Before I left Bowerstone, I hit up the tavern to buy 20 beers so I could get started on the drinking class. I then proceeded to sit in a corner of the tavern and slam back 20 cold ones. Feeling like a new man, I go to the guild for the Orchard Farm quest, and then I saw her. Briar Rose, the stuck-up snub of a hero whose very aura made me sick to my stomach. Well, it was either that or the many drinks I've had. Either way, as soon as she left, I vomited on the guild floor in front of the map table, then leveled up my physique and toughness to match my health. I accept the Orchard Farm quest. I chose to attack and steal rather than defend this time around, mostly for the money. This is my first taste of genuine combat with the stick. Up until now, I've been fighting large insects which can't block and are obviously really weak. But in this quest, I'll be fighting opponents who can defend just as I can, and you know what? At least in the beginning portion of the game, the stick isn't an awful weapon to use. Sure, it's a little weak, but certainly tolerable. I fend off the guards with the stick, have one of my compatriots grab the crates, and get through the quest with relative ease, which ends in Whisper wanting a rematch, and so I defeat her in combat with the stick for the second time. I complete the quest and head back to the guild to level up a little. I finally got my first support spell, Assassin Rush. Since it doesn't damage enemies or increase my damage output when casted, it fits within the criteria I've thrusted upon myself. Instead, it allows me to bypass their defenses for a few hits until they turn around and block any incoming attacks. While I'm here, I level up speed, physique, toughness, and health as well. Mostly so I'm not as squishy, because I'm only wearing a dress and bonking people and mythical monsters with part of a tree branch. Since it is on my mind and I'm typing up the script, I've decided to change the name of the stick to An Important Lesson, just to give it a little more flavor and excitement than, well, stick. Also because of the whole siren-like being bit, and because if you shorten it to the first letters in the 3 words, it spells out AIL, which is pronounced the same as the alcoholic beverage, ale. AIL also means to trouble or afflict someone in mind or body. Thank you to one of my friends on Discord, you really helped me out there. Next up is the Trader Escort quest, where I must take some traders to Barrow Fields. Sounds easy enough until I realize that the only path to Barrow Fields, and by extension Oakvale, is through Darkwood. Not that it is necessarily tough, but considering I'm expecting my damage output to fall off fairly quickly, I'm slightly concerned. On the way, I came across some ruffians that naturally spawn in the Greatwood Lake region, and proceeded to lop some unfortunate bandit's head off of his body with a stick. After the scuffle is a bandit toll that has been set up in Greatwood Gorge. I of course don't pay them, mostly for the experience and the fact that I need that money for more beer to fuel my ever-growing alcohol addiction. The normal bandits were easy enough, but the captain, elite, leader, or whatever you want to call him is substantially tougher than his twig-like peons. However, this is Fable we're talking about, and I eventually defeat him in combat. I did stop at the Cullis gate to grab some tattoos for the sake of further customization. I would have taken the time to make my own tattoos, but I'm unsure if Fable Anniversary still supports that neat little feature on PC. Surprisingly, the Hobbs and Greatwood Cave posed practically no threat at all and swiftly fell to my might. I finally met the traders at the Darkwood entrance and set on the path to Barrow Fields. I leave the injured trader to his fate and fight the first Balverine encounter. The fight wasn't difficult, but it was longer than I would have liked. Still, the old pooch couldn't fetch the stick out of my hand, and I remained victorious with no deaths. As one would expect, there are bandits lurking in the woods. My tiny tree caravan is attacked. I successfully fought off the very first wave of 4 whole bandits who almost killed one of the traders. The next wave finished the job unceremoniously, and I was left with 1 trader. Learning from my mistake, I tell the remaining trader to wait in Darkwood camps so I wouldn't fail the quest. I marched forward and cleared the way, fought some more bandits and Hobbs, then found what is essentially a living clump of dirt. The Earth Troll. I remember the fact that I could stay far enough away to where I could target him, but I wasn't right up against him. and I could use its projectiles to injure it and then finish it off with ale. You could argue that I technically failed the run, as rule number 1 was, I cannot do any damage with anything other than the stick, but I'm already this far in and I plan on finishing what I started. Also, as a small counter argument, I did use the stick to deflect the projectiles and I did kill the troll with it. I don't know, I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not it was within the rules. I continued my way through to Barrowfields and I forgot to bring the trader with me. Please forgive my idiocy, it was roughly around 3 or 4 in the morning and I let my brain go on autopilot near the end of the quest. I backtracked to the trader I left in the camp and made my way to Barrowfields again. I completed the quest and stole that blue mushroom just sitting there because I wanted to. I teleport back to the guild to spend some XP, leveling up the entire strength tree again and getting the heal life spell, just in case I come across another quest that requires escorting defenseless persons to a safe place. Returning back to Barrowfields, I pay off the 750 gold fine for thievery and enter Oakvale. I see the girl who was looking for a teddy bear named Rosie and have a small PTSD flashback to that night. I'm still mad about the surprise costume party and decided to cool off with some drinks. I initially bought 30 beers and went to talk to Maze, who told me about the blind CRS. After vomiting when Maze left, the neurons in my brain finally caught up to speed and I went back for more beer as it didn't put a noticeable dent in my funds. I bought the rest that the tavern in Oakvale had to offer, which was 20, then teleported back to the guild for an extra 40. That brought my drinking class to moderate drinker with 110 beers under my belt. Drinking all that alcohol left the effect of weight gain, and by the end of my small drinking spree, I became obese. After stewing on the thought of getting another title, I went ahead and bought Saber, as I didn't want to refer to the hero as Arseface, even though it fits considering he's a despicable human being. Happy with my progress for the day, I decided to stop playing and get some sleep. Picking back up where I left off, I made sure that I had nothing to level up or unlock. Before making my way to Twinblade's camp, I stopped by the Greatwood Cullis gate to see if there were any tattooists in the area, which sadly there were none. Feeling the slight sting of a minor defeat, I go to Oakvale and proceed to the clifftop path. I will have to be a little slicker this time around as I don't have a bow or crossbow at my disposal. I decided to go with an old childhood classic strategy to brute force my way through the area. I charge at the first bandit like an overly aggressive orangutan and get him to sound the alarm. I defeat the 3 bandits that spawned in the location and hide behind a rock until the fresh guards come out to their respective positions. After the last one finally gets to a spot, I quickly skitter past him and run for the gate. Walking to the abandoned road, I prepare myself for the gauntlet ahead of me. As most of you probably know, you must get the 5 pieces of the bandit outfit in order to properly enter the camp. In your way are a mix of standard and elite bandits. While the damage Ale can dish out is fine enough for the standard variety, the elites give me some issues. It takes a while to kill just one of them with a stick. And considering that fact, I'm likely going to have to put sheer willpower into any and all engagements with any of the tougher enemies in the game. Slogging my way through the abandoned road, I finally acquire all pieces of the outfit and walk on through. I know I said I couldn't wear any armor, but the fact that I don't have to enter combat with it on, I don't get any of the benefits and allow it so I can progress through the game. Once inside, I change back into my dress and kill the bandit that holds the pass I need. Also wake the trader up to buy a bunch of food and healing supplies just in case I have a particularly difficult time with Twinblade and his men. I move on to the elite camp, poke around for any goodies like the loot goblin I am, take out the bandit guarding the hostages, and free them. The gate to Twinblade's tent being left open, I go on through to fight the giant man himself. With ale ready in my hand, I dodge his attacks and hit him twice. We're gonna be here for a while. The low damage is appearing more and more egregious than before. While Twinblade isn't a difficult boss by any stretch of the imagination, he is tanky. With the stick and my current strength level, I'm only doing a total of 114 damage, which is much weaker than what the Stick of Justice did when I was playing as Paladin. Of course, I eventually beat him into submission and trigger the cutscene with Teresa. After she gives me a bunch of general experience, I decide to take out the bandits who have formed a ring around Twinblade and I search through his tent for some more stuff, and then finish the fight, ending in his demise. I won't say that the fight overall was flawless because I did get hit a couple of times. Still, no deaths on my part, and I returned to the guild to spend all that XP I got. I level my strength, health, toughness, and speed to level 4. My guile is sitting at a nice toasty 3, and assassin rush is at level 2. At some point I forgot to mention I grabbed Physical Shield, which yes, renders the fact that I'm wearing a dress a bit null, but it is tied to my mana bar and I don't have a lot to spare. Plus I can't master it since I'm not virtuous enough. Speaking of my mana pool, I leveled it up to 3 and then spend my remaining XP on level 2 of Heal Life and Physical Shield. I decided now was the time to celebrate and buy a bunch of beer. 40 from the Guild Tavern, 50 from Bowerstone, another 50 from Oakvale. After all that drinking, I have a total of 250 drinks under my belt, and I am now a certified alcoholic. A small video announcement. After my little celebration, I decided to take a break from playing, eat some food, and just rest a little bit. It seems that either the drinking class drops really quickly or it resets every time I boot the game up again. However, since it wants to be a headache and because I did technically reach it, I'm going to consider the goal of reaching the alcoholic drinking class complete. I will occasionally keep the beer flowing and drink, I'm just not going to be drinking about 100 plus beers every time I start the game up since it eats up recording time and is hardly engaging in the slightest. Now, back to the content. I go talk to Maze and he tells me to rescue his friend, the Archeologist. However, a slight detour is in order and I accept the Trader Massacre quest to get a little more money as it is normally a fairly easy quest. It went about as well as you'd expect from a careless, drunken, dress-wearing madman armed with a random piece of wood. In other words, I was humbled pretty quickly for my hubris. One of the guards got a good shot off with a crossbow, quickly ending my life and using a resurrection file. Having been served humility on a platter, I complete the quest and make my way to Witchwood through the Cullis Gate. As you all know, the first encounter with a rock troll is within Witchwood. Making up for the lack of stick combat with the last one, I rush the tall fella and repeatedly smack his ankles like a rabid chihuahua. Eventually the beast falls to ale and I press forward to the Witchwood stones. Already knowing the name of the demon door that houses the Archeologist, I smack the stones and talk to the man. He seems a bit ungrateful, and if plot armor wasn't something he had, I'd have destroyed him on the spot. Regardless, I complete the quest and head back to the guild. While I'm here, I upgrade my toughness to level 5, guile to level 4, and hold on to the last little scraps of XP I have. I also took another small detour to Twinblade's camp to sell off an extra resurrection file I had found and cannot use due to dying once. Then I make my way to Witchwood to deal with the Balverine issue that seems to be plaguing the village of Knothole Glade. I bought some bandits and decided to beat on some traders until I saw one who could possibly be a tattooist. As luck would have it, I found one and finally got a chest and face tattoo. When I got to Knothole Glade, I had to pulverize the petulant, playful puppies until the guard opened the gate. The source of the Balverines was none other than the White Balverine. This was probably the one fight I was dreading the most ever since I started the run. The White Balverine is tanky, fast, and has a penchant for knocking me down, as well as an ability to call on some friends to join in on the fun. I'm given a Silver Augment, which you're meant to use as it does more damage against Balverines and the like, the issue being the humble stick doesn't have any augmentation slots. Every normal hit to the White Balverine was a gobsmacking total of 6 damage, only being increased by 1 when I used a Flourish. Thankfully, I had quickly thought of a decent strategy to deal with the pups with moderate difficulty. I focused on the little peons, then switched focus to the big boy, mostly attacking from behind as it seemed to kind of stunlock them and keep me out of harm's way. Oh man, was this a fairly grueling battle. It felt like it took way longer than it did. In reality, the fight was close to 8 minutes long. Bringing back the head of the beast to the chief allowed me to be nominated for the arena. I of course celebrate in the usual fashion with 55 beers and a nice quiet evening. Returning back to the guild, I level up my health to level 5. The one quest I've been absolutely dreading, and the reason behind my choice to not play unheroic, is up next. It's the arena. On a normal playthrough, the arena is decently fun and kind of a breeze. But if you ever wanted to feel the constant presence of anxiety and a slight bit of insanity, do a stick run like this and you'll get your wish. I quickly made some preparations in the form of buying a bunch of food and potions. Since my damage output is getting ever lower and the enemies tougher, I decided a little caution was necessary. I also went ahead and changed the hero's title to Deathbringer, an edgy name to go with an equally scuffed run. I entered the arena waiting area, roll around for a while, and received the news that Chameleon perished. I'm ready to go in next and stay in the arena until the end. First up is the Wasp Horde. They prove to be no match for Ale and get wiped out pretty freaking quickly. Next up is the Hobbs. They're a bit tougher than the previous round, but since I followed my strategy of taking out the Spellslingers first, I got through it with relative ease. After defeating the Hobbs, it's time for the team rounds, and I'm paired with Whisper. Really? You don't have anyone else? Not like some super cool bandit dude? No? Okay. The enemy we must fight together are the Balverines. The first two waves go decently, all things considered. It's the third wave where things really start to get arduously long and torturous. The White Balverines proved to be just as tough as the initial one I fought before. Not wanting to take a chance on dying a bunch of times, I started using Physical Shield much more often. Mostly due to the fact that Balverines, especially in large groups, attack fast, pounce, and overall ruin your day like dropping your uncle's last cigarette down the toilet. The White Balverines take a hell of a beating before falling, and there are 3 of them in total. When the last one falls, I feel like I have aged a good 10 years mentally, but take a breath as the undead are next up on the chopping block. Compared to the Balverines, these undead buffoons are a 5-star vacation resort. Though they are slow and fairly weak, I often underestimated them and hyper-focused on 1 or 2, only to be smacked around like a ragdoll for my folly. Overall, not too much of a pain. The later waves were a bit tanky, but fall like the rest. With the undead made re-dead, we move on to the next round. Bandits are up. I used Physical Shield quite a bit more often than the previous round because of their ranged capabilities. The first wave went down without too much struggle. Later waves were tankier and blocked a lot, but were ultimately nothing to write home about. Earth Trolls popped their ugly mugs up from the ground and were fairly easy to eliminate considering they are stationary with a ranged attack. More trolls spawned in the next round, except they were of the rock variety. I kept in mind that the ranged attacks can and will harm their own, so I hid behind one while smacking it with the twig I hold in my hands while the other troll pelted it with rocks. I ran up to the next one and something magical happened after I wailed on it for a while. It seems a combination of me standing behind it and Whisper doing whatever the hell she's doing in front of it. The troll would keep looking around instead of performing its slam attack, making the last stretch of the round extremely easy. The last round is in sight and I must face Archeologist. You may be wondering why I excluded Whisper in that sentence, and it is simply because she is practically worthless against the giant beast. I must enunciate that I'm using a stick against a giant scorpion. I used Physical Shield pretty much the entire round, as Archeologist can put me in a shallow grave anytime he wants to. One attack can almost completely destroy my Physical Shield, so if I didn't keep it up, there was no telling what it would do to me. Also, a little something I found out about this fight. Because I'm usually able to kill the small scorpions pretty quickly, I didn't realize that Archeologist would come back up within a certain time. I always thought it was tied to the little guys it would spawn. The scorpion eventually drains all my will potions due to my reckless behavior, but is eventually defeated. When I finally land the last blow on Archeologist, a new round is made up on the spot. I must fight and defeat Whisper. I have no qualms whatsoever because she has been more annoying than usual in this run, taking kills, knocking me down with her damn grenades, and being fairly useless in general. I fight her without any will potions, so Physical Shield sees no use this time around. We smack each other around for a while until she yields, thinking I'll spare her. I pay no attention to her pleas as I continue the fight to get rid of a thorn that has been in my backside for the entire quest. Plus, I get a nice chunk of money, which is nothing to scoff at. I kill Whisper with a stick and head out of the arena. Apparently I made Thunder mad. Lady Grace says I can go into Bowerstone North, and then I return to the guild to spend that huge amount of XP I got. Just in case any of you were wondering how I got a bunch of strength and will XP, I used 2 Ages of Strength potions and 1 Ages of the Will potion. I leveled my toughness to max, physique and health sit at level 6. Physical Shield is upgraded to level 3, which is the max since Deathbringer is evil. Assassin Rush goes up to level 3 as well, and Magic Power is level 5. I then celebrate by drinking 140 beers, buying a new dress, then stealing a couple of style cards so I can have a complete tattoo set, as well as different facial hair, namely the stripped beard and foreign mustache. I also thought that since the hero went through the arena armed with a piece of wood, that the spiral dementia face tattoo would be quite fitting. I take one small little trip to the Demon Door in Barrow Field since the hero is fat enough to enter. All I got from my alcoholic nature was a Will Master's Elixir. Another quest that I was originally dreading when I started this run is up next, saving the worthless Archeologist again. Even on a normal playthrough, I'm not excited to go through this quest, the main reason being the fact that I've got to deal with Jack's minions. These guys are decently tough, fast, and like to block quite often. Though for anyone struggling with these abominations, which should have been left in whatever dank hole they came from, they only strike 4 times in their combo. I of course fight all of them because Mama didn't raise a little Debbie snack cake for a son. And honestly, one-on-one, they weren't too bad. A little grating due to the ungodly sound that emanates from within them, but fairly easy to cheese like the rest of the enemies. However, in a group, they can and will decimate you like a bear that has been fed steroids for its entire life. I fight a rock troll, which takes time but is easy as there are minimal complications. Then comes the point where I must rescue the archaeologist himself. The struggle mostly stems from the 5-minute time frame I'm given to save him. I was quite worried as my damage is the equivalent of smacking someone with a marshmallow, and Assassin Rush just doesn't work on certain terrain like bridges. I don't know why. I was initially going to get rid of the guards as I killed the first one, but I became too focused and preoccupied with the impending doom I thought this run was going to experience. My worry was for nothing though, and the guards came in kind of clutch. With 2 minutes and 3 seconds left on the clock, the last minion falls and the archaeologist is saved. I talked to him about getting into Bargate prison, and he tells me to follow a path in Litchfield Graveyard, but the rest is up to me. Because I picked up a bow and another resurrection file during the quest, I head to Twinblade's camp and sell off my goods so I can continue torturing myself. I did make a quick little pit stop at the guild so I could level up. I maxed out my physique, got speed to level 5, heal life to level 3, and finally maxed out Assassin Rush. Now it's time for the graveyard and the Boney boys. It was quite easy, as it usually is. Though the shambling creatures are a little tanky, they barely put up much of a fight as I preemptively grabbed Nostro's stuff. I give the skeleton his gear and head to the demon door to be let in. I get through fairly easily, the only real problem being the big boy at the end. But as is usually the case, a little willpower and perseverance solved that issue. I make it to the Circle of the Dead where there is more fighting to be done. It's not that this particular part is difficult, but it does take longer than normal to kill all the undead as they tend to go outside of the circle much more often when you have low damage output. I did use physical shield quite a bit, so they couldn't knock me down, but generally speaking, my tactics didn't change much. Here's a real doozy for you. Even though I'm a bit pressed for time, I didn't immediately go through Bargate prison. I instead decided now would be a good time to fight Thunder. So I give Lady Grey a gift, preemptively buy a house in Bowerstone South, and find her stupid necklace. Then I'm off to fight Thunder. As epic as a hero versus hero battle sounds, this wasn't it. The fight was long and barely enjoyable. Why? Because Thunder loves the block and I'm still armed with only the trustiest weapon in the game. The only way I could do damage to him was by getting blocked twice and then flourishing as it breaks through any defense that an enemy can muster. Then there is his special attack. He holds up his sword and creates a carousel of lightning to hit anyone in an expanding area. I also can't use magic or a bow, so I can't stop him while he's doing it. To save you some time, I eventually won and forced Thunder to face the fact that I defeated him in single combat and killed his sister on top of it, just for bragging rights, because I never married Lady Grey. Now I'm not going to stall any longer, it's time for Bargate Prison, or living hell for anyone being insane enough to use a frickin' stick. I make my way to Bargate Prison via the super secret passage and have to fight more Boney boys. There was one area that proved to be a bit of an annoyance because a nymph decided to jump into the battle. Not that she really did much damage, she just kept using her ranged attack which would either knock me or the undead down. Combine that with a closed off area full of creatures that want to gut me, it got pretty annoying pretty fast. After destroying the barrier that was keeping me outside, I started getting through Bargate properly. I passed the boss room that holds the Kraken, and then fight the guards in the next area. They were fairly tough and took a beating to put down, but they were like the countless bandit fights I've been through already. All you really need is a bit of elbow grease. Eventually I find my mother's cell and free her. Instead of fighting the large group of guards, I just run for the exit and get captured. I'm then shaved, shoved in a cell, and forced to run in the races. The races are a bit of a nice reprieve from bashing my head into a brick wall, but I hurry up and get it over with since I was starting to miss the torture I forced myself to endure. The second race is underway and I win, of course, finally grabbing the key while the warden recites his god-awful poetry. I let everyone else stay in their cells to suffer as I escape. It was my hard work that allowed me to grab the key after all, and they did nothing. After leaving the prisoners to fate, I grab my gear, don my dress, and equip my stick. I do fight the lone guard that popped into the room. I've never experienced this, but he tried to stop the guy who killed a bunch of other guards with a stick while wearing a dress. He probably deserved it anyway. I run to collect my mother and once again opt for the run away while everyone attempts to chase me down strategy. It may be a long-winded title, but I'm still working on a name and it also works fantastically. I'm then faced with a creature that almost broke me mentally, the Kraken. Besides starting off with technical difficulties since my controller tried to connect to another device, the fight was okay. It did take a while as the tentacles have a semi-large health pool, and I had to fight 4 of them before the Kraken pops his head up. Once he did, I could start doing actual damage to him, and yikes, the output is atrocious. I think I'm gonna be here for a while again. With the first half done, it's time to fight the tentacles again and wait for him to pop his head up. Being the good son that I am, I let my mother tank some of the hits as I defeated the 4 tentacles. Once he broke the water's surface, I continued to smack him in the face until he stopped moving. The fight, like the one with Thunder, was painful, arduous, and time-consuming, but I get through it nonetheless and free my mother from her imprisonment. I immediately headed to Barrowstone South as I wanted to change my hair back to normal, then head to the guild to spend that XP I got. I maxed out my health and speed, then brought my magic power to level 6. Afterwards, I go around to the various locations with the shops to restock my potions and to get more food. You know, just in case. Next up, I have to go activate the ancient Cullis gate located in Darkwood to reach Hook Coast. And this is where I ran into a pretty big problem with how I approached this run. You see, I have forced myself to only use damage from the stick itself and disallowed any spells that increase damage, meaning Berserk or Multi-Strike are barred from use. However, I'm going to have to break a rule, which means the run is officially void and can't be argued otherwise. Mostly because I don't have the energy or mental fortitude this late into the game to play some advanced combat algebra for bragging rights. Though I'm not going to end the video here, we're already near the end of the base game and I plan on completing this run. For the sake of keeping you in the loop, I'll explain what went wrong. So the goal, once you reach the Cullis gate, is to kill the undead that spawn until the Cullis gate has had its fill of souls. Sounds pretty simple on paper and you're probably scratching your head at my decision considering the undead are fairly weak. That is true for the most part, but due to the undead that start spawning once you're about halfway done with filling the Cullis gate, I would either have to play perfectly or just break a rule and get on with this video. The pure damage output of the stick is too low to dispatch these specific undead quickly and efficiently. In case you don't know, the Cullis gate is on a timer, and it simply takes me too long to properly deal the amount of damage required to kill them. So the time it takes for me to kill one of these disgusting creatures basically resets my progress to about halfway and I'm stuck in a loop. Now I could either grind a while through questing and participating in bandit genocide to get multi-strike, keeping the run mostly intact, or go to a shop, grab the strongest weapon I can find, and take my frustrations out on the walking dummies made of bone and armor. Of course, I'll put the weapon away and proceed normally if I go that route. Regardless of which way I choose to proceed, a rule is broken and the run is void. I decided the best thing I could do to somewhat salvage this run is simply grind out some XP for a maxed out multi-strike. Little did I know this was going to be a bit painful as I needed 65,080 total experience. So to start this training arc, I thought it'd probably be best to complete untouched quests that I could accept. The first one I decided to do was Lost Trader. I fought pretty much every single bandit I could see like a bloodthirsty maniac that kept screaming about eggs. I returned the trader's missing brother unscathed and completed the quest with minimal complications. After that, I accepted the trader rescue quest. Before I began the quest, I went ahead and leveled multi-strike to level 2. The basic premise of the quest is that some bandits are holding 3 traders hostage. My job is to go in there and get them out. What happens to the bandits is of no concern. Some stick smacking action later, and I have successfully escorted the hostages out of the camp. Because I have enough XP to go ahead and do it, I upgrade multi-strike to level 3. Now off to my next quest, which is Execution Tree Rescue. A bandit is about to be executed for his crimes, and I have to stop that from happening. This quest was perhaps not the best choice as it is timed, and that means I have to rush through most of the areas which are laden with XP carriers known as guards. Having been rushed all the way to the end, I didn't get much XP out of the quest from the roughly 7 guards and 1 executioner, which means another quest I must do. I went with Bandit Spy Extraction. Instead of just diving into it, I traveled to the different shops in the game to stock up on potions, mostly will potions. If you haven't noticed, I started using multi-strike not for the sake of making combat faster, but for the XP, as I get some will XP every time it is casted. Combat being ever so slightly faster is just the cherry on top. I start the quest and fail during my initial run as the guards make a beeline for the spy that I need to get back to Bowerstone. Remembering that escort quests can be made substantially easier by telling my charge to wait near the exit of the location I found him in, I clear the path for him and complete the quest. The final quest I accept is Break the Siege. Some bandits thought it'd be a good idea to attempt a siege in Knothole Glade because the village was holding their boss for his crimes. I collect 2 guards as I need the distraction and slight increase in damage output at the gate, then get ready to defend the village. I charge in like the 8-brained creature I am, and a bandit managed to weasel his way in to try to escort his boss out. Panicking as I came pretty close to failing the quest, I just smacked the boss around a bit with my stick to get him to stay within the threshold of the village, and a guard got the last bandit, completing the quest. Seeing as that last quest didn't give me enough XP to max out multi-strike, I went through the Great Wood areas and through the entrance to Darkwood, killing anything that moved. That meant exterminating bandits, guards, traders, and various other repugnant creatures. I eventually got the XP needed and made my way back to the guild to purchase the last upgrade, which means it's time for round 2 against the Boney boys. Round 2 started out somewhat promising. I was able to deal with them in a slightly quicker manner and I almost completed the task at hand. However, a pang of sadness overcame me as I realized that I was not killing them fast enough and ended up in a loop again. So is this area possible with the stick? I'd venture to say yes if you don't limit yourself like I have and play your cards right, but I suppose for those of you who were curious about how far the stick alone could take you, this is highly likely the end of the road. Instead of opting for different strategies, wasting more time and hard drive space than what is necessary, I give up the dream and buy a better weapon. Seeing that the damage output of iron weapons wasn't a huge improvement, I bought a Master Longsword. It came out of the box with 3 augment slots which I filled with sharpening, silver, and piercing augments. Marching back to the ancient Cullis gate armed with an actual weapon, I fight the undead again. It only took 24 seconds. I should feel relieved, but I'm still disappointed by the fact that I had to use another weapon that was way stronger than the stick. After that, I go look at the magic barrier in Hook Coast because I have nothing else better to do with my time, and teleport back to the guild as my mother said she had found something. She then gets kidnapped for like the 3rd time. Maybe I should put a bell around her neck considering how often I lose her. With the news of my mother being kidnapped again, I give the guildmaster the fancy book with difficult words that makes Deathbringer's head hurt. He tells me to go to Hook Coast and stand in front of the Jello barrier as he reads aloud from the book. Plot twist, the weird old man that smells like mothballs and been gay reveals his true allegiance, betraying everyone out of a sense of self-preservation. So I do what any worker in an American nursing home does. I mercilessly beat him with a stick. This fight wasn't hard, but I swear whoever designed it didn't have the camera angle in mind. The little stretch of fight in the lighthouse wasn't exactly great. I get what they were going for, but it felt very clunky when your only weapon is a stick. After putting the rowdy old man in his place, he drones on about how immortality is the only goal for some heroes. Then he dies on the spot. After the brief scuffle with Maze, I return to the guild and attempt to stop Jack from activating the focus sites. I run through a nice portion of the areas I've been to throughout my journey and reach the final one where he decides to go to the guild. I follow him through the portal and find that the guild is on fire. I guess the guildmaster had let a fire grow out of control when he was making some super something. I'd hate to see the insurance premiums on this screw up. It's finally time to fight Jack. Armed with only a stick, we have a battle of epic proportions. Okay, I lied. I fought some minions first, which took a nice chunk of time, then just used flourishes on Jack until he inevitably entered his 2nd phase. I did do a little research before this fight that said you could damage Jack by standing underneath him. His first 3 attacks were supposed to hurt him via splash damage, and you could hit him with a melee weapon. But I suppose the dev team had patched the splash damage out in Fable Anniversary, and I couldn't hit him with a stick since it wasn't long enough. Thankfully, I saved right before the fight and went back to purchase only 1 level of the Fireball spell so I could do my best to adhere to the rules that I had set up. Mostly because the bow in the guild caves was made of oak and not yew. I fight the minions again, then fight Jack in melee combat. Now's the time for his 2nd phase. I start lobbing fireballs at him, and they don't do horrendously. Just like most combat encounters so far, it is a test of patience, willpower, and drinking a bunch of potions as if my life depended on it. Which, I mean, yeah, it kinda did. Meanwhile, his entourage is constantly harassing me as I do my best to make this fight as short as possible. I eventually whittle him down and defeat him. I could take the Sword of Aeons as a spare weapon just in case of any impossible scenarios, but I can only kill with a stick, so I throw it into the black hole that was conjured by Jack's demise. But if you think that's it for the video, think again, Cupcake. That's right, I'm going to torture myself even more by attempting to beat the last chapters with a stick. So it seems Scythe, a golden raisin of a man, has some valuable information, and the guildmaster said I should come to the boasting platform. I teleport to the guild and level up a bit first. I only have 2 things left, and I figured it'd probably be a good idea to buy them. So I maxed out my Guile and Magic Power. Guile for the better prices at shops, and Magic Power for very obvious reasons. I go outside to the boasting platform to see a projection of Scythe talking about summoners, and that I need to open the primal demon door to retrieve the fire heart. He then gets hit in the back and the projection cuts off. Now it's time to go grab that gem, which means it is puzzle time. So I have to turn all the suns into moons or all the moons into suns. Suns save the prophets, and moons kill them. I think you all know what I'm about to choose. I proceeded through most of the puzzles with ease except for the last one where I failed once as my brain was trying to understand the board a little better before finding the solution. I really only did it for the guy whose scream reminds me of Dale Gribble. Plus, Deathbringer is evil. Why would he not sacrifice him to whatever eldritch horror he worships? The last prophet is sacrificed to the old ones, and the fireheart slips on down from where it was sitting. Having completed the first half of the task that was given to me, I go and talk to the guildmaster again once I walk out. The guildmaster suggests getting Avo's Tear, which is just a blue raspberry flavor of the Sword of Aeons. I ignored his suggestion as I found it insulting. Teleporting to Hook Coast, I realize that there will be an attack from the summoners who will attempt to destroy the Fireheart as it warms up. I place the Fireheart in the Hook Coast Lighthouse, meet Briar Rose downstairs, and prepare myself for a fight as a summoner starts lobbing spells at the Fireheart. This turned out to be one of the times that I was worried for nothing, as summoners apparently aren't as difficult as I had initially thought. The first one went down with only a small fight. Then 2 more plus the minions pop up in town. This was a part where my misplaced anxiety decided now would be a good time to constantly pester me. My goal here is to kill the summoners before they destroyed the Fireheart. I was worried I'd have another Darkwood Cullis Gate fiasco where my damage output was way below the requirement. Apparently, if you only attack the summoners with flourishes, they will be stuck in a loop where they try to evade you. The minions won't attack you either. Pair that with Assassin Rush and you've got AA grade USDA approved natural cheese. It takes a while with only a stick and raw strength, but the first of the 2 summoners falls, leaving the last one ripe for harvesting. I no longer have to worry about the Fireheart as the last summoner is too busy attempting to strafe away from me. It eventually falls and I have completed my task of summoning a ship to take me to the Northern Wastes. As soon as I'm able to play again, I make a stop to Bowerstone South and get my hair situated, then teleport back to the Northern Wastes and battle an ice troll. At first I was dreading it because of the iframes they're given when they start spawning ice spikes from the ground, but I also have the ability to evade quickly, unlike in my Let's Play series. Like all the other troll fights, it takes time but isn't much of a challenge. I run past all of the enemies from here on as I don't want to be stuck fighting them for about an hour. I finally make it to Snowspire Village, and my first order of business is to grab every style card I can find and apply some new tattoos. I rarely ever go for the Furite tattoos as I like the previous set I had a little more, but it's high time this psychopath gets mostly covered in ink and looks like a hideous monster. I also took off the upper parts of the dress as I wanted to change up the hero's appearance just a little bit. After the momentary distraction, I returned to the task at hand, finding the glyphs of inquiry. I search through the Necropolis and easily find them since there is a method to the madness that is the grave epitaphs. There are 3 positive ones you need to look out for, and finding them is pretty simple if you just read a little. I run past most of the enemies as I don't feel like dealing with them and make it to the last grave. This one is defended by 2 minions and 2 summoners. It was a pretty easy fight as I lay the cheese on thick. I return to Scythe and must get ready to become some variation of the Grim Reaper as I need to get some souls. In order to open the Bronze Gate, I need 3 souls. But before I begin reaping souls like it's an average Tuesday, I decide to find a few more Furite tattoos, as I just never really explored that much when I normally play the Lost Chapters. And I also wanted matching torso and back tattoos, as well as a new face tattoo. After getting the tattoos, I make one more stop in Bowerstone South and bring back the long beard. I just felt like changing it up a little. Now it's time to grab those souls. First up is the king of the arena. Briar Rose pointed me in the direction of Thunder. She said he would know where to find a soul that fit the description, and so I made my way to Knothole Glade. Thunder told me to look in the arena itself, but why go all that way when he's standing right here? He is an arena champion after all. I then decide to take his soul so he can join his sister in the afterlife. Or, actually, never mind, his soul will be forever tortured. The fight is as annoying as the first time I fought Thunder, except this time I have the liberty of a nice open area to dodge his lightning carousel. It takes a while, but Thunder falls before me just like his sister did. That's 1 soul down, 2 more to go. The next soul is the heroine. Briar Rose suggested I go pay my mother another visit in the Oakvale graveyard, but I like my mother being in this plane of existence, so I decide to take Briar Rose's soul instead. This was a bit of a tough fight, though that is mostly because I ran out of will potions near the end. Briar Rose, like Thunder, loves to block. Flourishes are the only way I can reliably damage her. She also comes with a special ability of her own. She disappears and creates copies of herself. If I don't find the correct one, or cause the copies to go away, she will siphon some health from me, healing her in the process. When I ran out of will potions, this was the most painful part. In a normal playthrough, I'd have Inflame because of its high AoE damage. However, this is a stick run and I can't use it. I eventually come out on top and took her soul as well. With the main person researching the inscriptions being dead, Jack had to tell me where to go for the next and last soul required, the oldest soul. Instead of battling Nostro again, I decide to pay a visit to the Guildmaster. He is absolutely surrounded by elite guards that take a nice chunk of time to wade through. The Guildmaster also buffs and sometimes heals the guards, making this fight drag on much longer than it should. When all the guards have perished, the Guildmaster and I are the last ones in the woods. He attempts to bargain with me, but his words fall upon deaf ears. I just made my way through a bunch of guards and I'm here to claim my frickin' prize. And well, no fight plays out, but the cutscene that plays does more justice than what I ever could with words.
Very well, hero. Do your worst. I am no defenseless old man. I have powers that you can't begin to...
That's for suggesting I grab Avo's tear, you weird old man. With the last soul snatched, I teleport back to the Archon Shrine and place it in its corresponding place. The Bronze Gate opens and it is ready for me to face Jack for the second and final time. Scythe made a good suggestion to prepare, which I can't help but agree with since I know the fight is going to be a bit of a long one. Taking Scythe's suggestion, I take a little bit to go around to the various stores around Albion and stock up on some potions. Mostly for the will potions, since Briar Rose made me use a lot more than I wanted to. Thanks a lot, you worthless harpy. May you forever be tortured by stepping on Legos and getting pecked by a magpie for all of eternity. So as you could guess, this fight with Jack is more difficult than the last one. Mostly due to his attack patterns, the damage he can dish out, and the peons that will spawn in when he's around half health. Those peons namely being minions and the occasional summoner. I do save before passing through the Bronze Gate just in case we have another Darkwood Cullis Gate situation. After all that, I go on through and have to fight Jack in his dragon form. Now the first bit of the fight is mostly trying to get his attack patterns down so I can either evade them or use them to my advantage in some pseudo-kamikaze strategy I will employ later on in the fight. Of course, I need to test the waters, which causes me to lose my second life during the run. Because as you would imagine, a skirt and a pair of women's sandals doesn't protect much against a giant dragon who wants to munch on your bones. Somewhat knowing the attack windup of his bite, I cast Physical Shield to better protect myself against his attacks. If I didn't do this, I would have met my end pretty quickly. After I smack him around a little bit, he flies up into the air. This is where I had more difficulty dealing with his attacks, as he would either choose a place to sit and use some variation of a fire attack, or commence a strafing run and Willy Pete me to death. The hitbox in the strafing run seemed a little unfair at times since it looked like I was in the clear, yet I still get mostly obliterated by it. but it's likely my fault rather than an issue with the game. After what feels like a dog's age, I finally whittle Jack down to about half health, and so his minions start spawning in to carve my ass up like a Christmas turkey. At some point, this is where I start using my pseudo-kamikaze strategy, intentionally getting Jack to do a strafing run with enemies around me. You may be asking why I would be wasting the precious bit of potions I have, and the answer is, so I don't have to deal with the enemies myself. You see, Jack in dragon form is a big boy. Being a big boy means his attacks have a semi-large area of coverage and some good damage to boot. So it makes them easier to deal with if I have to, or it kills them outright. This strategy proved to be invaluable when the summoners started popping up, as they are pretty tanky normally and can absolutely destroy my physical shield. When I finally got Jack to about a quarter or a fifth of his health, I got kind of unlucky. So to explain to you what happened, when he goes to the sides of the map, he has two attacks, a small flurry of fireballs or a stream of fire. It really depends on the range you're at. When there were enemies nearby, I tried to remain close to Jack and lure them up the staircase. Instead of that happening, Jack and one of his minions pulled a tag team move and I got caught in a stream of fire, killing me pretty quickly and using up a third life. Really, the minion just distracted me and I got too close to Jack before his attack finished, which destroyed my physical shield, and then he attacked again, frying me to a crisp. After that small screw up, I played a little more cautiously and finally defeated Jack. As for what I did with the mask, I put it on, since there was magic bounding me to only using the stick. The one time I didn't, the Goblin God said it was okay. He's practically harmless now, and with that, the run is finished. Good gravy, that was painful. This video took a lot of time to make, and it took even more energy to actually edit everything. I started back in March of this year, and by the time you see this video, it'll be somewhere in August. I suffered through a lot of mental anguish, mostly redoing the audio because I was initially unhappy with it, which pushed everything back quite a bit. So I would highly appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe, especially if you want to see more content like this in the future. Honestly, there at the end, the stick didn't seem like it was too bad of a weapon. It was either that or I was starting to not mind the pain that came with this run. Sure, for boss fights and the like, it kind of sucked, but I learned something with this run. Now you may be thinking I've gone batty to take anything away from torturing myself for roughly 16 hours. However, the one thing I've learned with this run is regardless of the obstacles you face, perseverance, patience, and an indomitable spirit will see you through to the end. Even if you have a disappointing situation, such as my attempts to destroy the undead at the Darkwood Cullis gate, it can still be quite enriching. Yeah, it sucks that the run is technically void, but hey, it's whatever. I got through most of the game with a stick. That's more than what others could say. So I'll leave you with this. If there's something you want to do, go out and do it. If you stick with it, it'll likely pay off in the end. Anyway, this has been Burnt Toaster from Burnt Toaster Productions, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.